Have you ever noticed how the idea of a family gathering sounds nice right up until the moment it actually happens? You're sitting at home, enjoying your peace, maybe watching something or finally having a quiet moment to yourself. And then your phone buzzes. A message in the family group chat. Everyone's coming over this weekend. Suddenly, your brain does something interesting. Instead of excitement, there's a tiny wave of dread. You imagine the noise, the questions, the forced small talk, the relative who always asks about your life choices, and the part of you that quietly whispers, "Do I really have to go?" And here's the thing most people don't talk about. If you hate family gatherings, or even just feel drained by them, it doesn't necessarily mean you're cold, antisocial, or a bad family member. In fact, psychology suggests something much more fascinating is happening inside your mind. Let me paint a scene you might recognize. You walk into the house where the gathering is happening. The door opens, voices overlap, someone hugs you, someone else asks what you've been doing lately, a cousin is playing loud videos on their phone, and somewhere in the background there's an aunt discussing something intensely with your parents. Within minutes, your brain starts scanning the room like a radar system. Who's gonna ask awkward questions? Who expects you to stay longer than you want? Where is the quiet corner? What you're feeling in that moment is something psychologists call social energy management. Your brain is constantly calculating how much emotional effort a situation will require. And family gatherings, believe it or not, are some of the most emotionally complex environments you can enter. Not because people are bad, but because history is in the room. Family isn't just people. Family is memory. Every interaction you've ever had with them is quietly sitting in your subconscious like files in a cabinet. The time someone judged you, the time you felt misunderstood, the expectations you felt growing up. All of that shows up the moment you step into that environment, even if no one says a word about it. That's why a random social event with strangers can sometimes feel easier than dinner with relatives. Your brain is doing something psychologists call role activation. Around family, we unconsciously slip back into old versions of ourselves. The quiet child, the responsible one, the one who had to explain everything, the one who never felt fully seen. Even if you've grown, changed, and built a completely different life, your brain sometimes goes, "Ah, yes, this environment. I know who I'm supposed to be here." And that can feel exhausting. There's also something else happening that most people underestimate: emotional exposure. With friends or coworkers, there are boundaries. People don't usually ask extremely personal questions 5 minutes into meeting you, but family gatherings often operate on a completely different rule book. Suddenly, someone is asking about your job, your relationships, your future plans, your life timeline, all in one conversation. And your brain goes, "Wow, that's a lot of information they want." Now, interestingly, research in social psychology shows that people who feel overwhelmed by family gatherings often have higher levels of social awareness. They notice tone shifts, micro-expressions, subtle tension between relatives. In other words, your brain isn't just attending the event, it's analyzing the entire emotional atmosphere. It's like being in a room where 10 conversations are happening at once, and your mind is quietly tracking all of them. That can be mentally draining, especially if you're someone who values calm environments or meaningful conversations, rather than surface-level chatter. Another reason people dislike family gatherings is something called expectation pressure. Families often carry invisible scripts about what life should look like. By a certain age, you should have achieved this, you should be doing that, you should visit more, call more, be more involved. Even if no one says these things directly, your brain can feel them in the air. Humans are wired to detect social expectations. It's an ancient survival instinct. Thousands of years ago, belonging to the group meant safety. So when your brain senses even a small chance of judgment or comparison, it becomes hyper-alert. Which is why sometimes just the anticipation of the gathering feels more stressful than the gathering itself. And then there's the introvert-extrovert dynamic, which is often misunderstood. People assume introverts hate people, But that's not actually true. Many introverts love people deeply. They just process social interaction differently. Imagine social energy like a phone battery. Some environments charge it, others drain it. Family gatherings, especially large ones, tend to involve noise, overlapping conversations, emotional discussions, and unpredictable social interactions. For certain brains, that's like running 10 apps at once on low battery mode. Eventually, you need to step outside, find a quiet room, or suddenly remember an important call. Now, here's something really interesting that psychology reveals. People who feel uncomfortable at family gatherings are often the same people who are highly reflective about relationships. They think about emotional dynamics more deeply than others. They notice patterns. They question traditions. They ask themselves things like, why do we always do this the same way? Or, why does this conversation make me feel like I'm 15 again? That kind of awareness can be a gift and a challenge, because once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. For example, you might notice that certain relatives always talk over others, or that some conversations revolve around comparison, or that one person plays the role of peacemaker while another always becomes the center of attention. Family system psychology actually studies this exact thing. Families tend to develop roles over time, almost like characters in a story, and gatherings are when those roles come alive. But here's where the perspective shift begins. Hating family gatherings doesn't necessarily mean you dislike your family. Sometimes it simply means your brain craves authenticity over performance. It means you're sensitive to emotional energy. It means you value depth more than routine social rituals. In other words, your discomfort might actually be a signal of self-awareness. Think about it like this. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is speaking a language you used to speak fluently, but now you've changed, you've grown, your priorities are different, your identity is evolving. Part of you still understands the language of the family dynamic, but another part of you is building a new one. That in-between space can feel strange. You're connected, but also observing. And honestly, a lot of adults experience this quietly without ever talking about it. Another psychological layer here involves emotional memory. The brain doesn't just remember events logically, it remembers how they felt. So if past gatherings included tension, awkward moments, or feeling misunderstood, your brain stores that emotional data. Next time an invitation appears, your mind runs a quick prediction. Last time this happened, it was stressful. Should we prepare? That's not negativity. That's your brain trying to protect your emotional energy. But something fascinating happens over time when people start understanding these patterns instead of judging themselves for them. They stop thinking, why am I like this? And start thinking, oh, this is just how my mind processes social environments. And that shift is powerful. Because suddenly, instead of forcing yourself to fit perfectly into every family dynamic, you start showing up more authentically. Maybe you stay for a shorter time. Maybe you focus on connecting with one or two people instead of the whole room. Maybe you allow yourself to step outside when things get overwhelming. That's not avoidance. That's emotional intelligence. And ironically, when you stop fighting your own psychology, gatherings sometimes become lighter. Not perfect, not magical, but lighter. You realize something important. You don't have to perform your role exactly the same way anymore. You can evolve within the system. And here's the surprising part. Many of the relatives you think are perfectly comfortable at gatherings are actually navigating their own internal scripts too. The talkative cousin might feel pressure to keep conversations alive. The host might be anxious about everything going well. The relative asking personal questions might simply be trying, in their own awkward way, to connect. Family dynamics are messy because humans are messy, but they're also interesting. They show us where we came from, how we've changed, and sometimes how much we've grown without even realizing it. So if you've ever sat at a family gathering counting the minutes until you can leave, feeling a mix of love, exhaustion, and mild confusion about why it feels so intense, you're not alone. Your brain isn't broken. In fact, it might just be more aware of emotional complexity than most people realize.
And once you start seeing gatherings through that psychological lens, something shifts. Instead of viewing them as a test you have to pass, they become more like a social experiment your brain is observing in real time. You notice the conversations differently, the patterns, the little moments of genuine connection that sometimes get hidden behind the noise. And maybe, just maybe, the next time a message pops up saying the whole family is getting together, the reaction won't be pure dread. It might be curiosity mixed with caution, which, honestly, is a pretty human place to be. By the way, I'm curious about your experience with this. Are you someone who secretly enjoys family gatherings once you're there, or are you the person mentally planning your escape route before dessert even arrives? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring the psychology behind everyday things like this, you might want to stick around.